We hear a lot of the stories about the overdoses, and we hear about the resulting arrest from drug addiction. But there are so many great stories about families being restored that we don't always hear about. We don't always hear about moms and dads who get a chance to have a relationship with their children and their grandchildren. Those things happen a lot in places like drug court. I've had some times where I had to sentence them out of the drug court program. They just didn't get it. But a few years later, something clicked with them, and they will come back and say, thank you for what you did. Something there stuck with me.
Substance use disorder touches all our lives, and often we feel hopeless or frustrated in our pursuit to understand how and why it happens.
Welcome to APC Recovery Cafe, where we discuss the topics and trends around substance use, provide education and resources, offer recovery support, and also discuss prevention tactics, all through the stories of the people who have been there.
We invite you to grab your favorite coffee or tea and join us for a variety of guests that will bring understanding, information, connection, and hope.
Together, we can break the stigma and pave a brighter future for each other.
Hey folks, welcome into this episode of APC Recovery Cafe. My name is Art Wimberly. I'm a person grateful to be in long-term recovery. I'm a volunteer at the Addiction Prevention Coalition, and I'm in the studio today with the co-host, Carrie Wimberly. Hi, Carrie.
Good morning, Art.
Yeah,
So
you
glad
have
to
a
be here.
special guest for us.
We do have a special guest. Very excited to have Shanta Owens with us, the Honorable Shanta Owens, who happens to be my boss as well, except for just a few days ago, rolled off. But let me introduce her properly. Judge Owens is a circuit court judge for the 10th Judicial Circuit of Alabama. She was the presiding judge for the drug court program, which is when I met her and when she became chairperson of our APC board. She's a graduate of Ramsey High School.
Hey, go Rams.
Rams.
I'm guessing I graduated from there a little bit earlier.
Just a year or two earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
And Alabama State University, which I know you're very proud of and very fond of. After completing her undergraduate studies, she attended LSU School of Law, and there's no way I'm going to pronounce this right, in France. So pronounce that for me.
It is the University of Aix-Marseille
Okay.
in Aix-en-Provence, France.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
And she enrolled in a dual degree program, received her Juris Doctor, JD, and Bachelor of Civil Law degrees. And she's been the chairperson of our board. She just rolled off. I'm not going to cry. She's a great friend as well. She's also a graduate of Project Corporate Leadership, Leadership Birmingham, Leadership Vestavia Hills, Momentum Women's Leadership Class, and Leadership Alabama. Clearly, she's a leader.
Yeah.
And a dear friend. So welcome. We're so
Thank
glad.
you.
to
Thank you for
have
having
you.
me.
Okay, so first of all, we need to talk about that drink that's in your hand. So that is a decaf coffee with a little hazelnut syrup. Okay, first of all, why decaf?
Because caffeine makes me too wired. And
You're
so,
naturally wired anyway.
yes,
yeah.
exactly, Art. Like, I don't need any more energy. I
So
wake
no
up wired.
You don't drink any caffeine?
No, I do. I'll drink a Coke every now and then, but something about caffeine and coffee, it really makes my body shake. And so if I drink coffee, and I love coffee, I'll only drink a decaf.
Okay, and so it doesn't have a lot of cream. I mean, just a little something. Is that just because you don't like it, or because you're so disciplined that you only have a little bit of?
The honest answer is because I'm a woman and we're always looking for ways to cut calories.
Yes.
I love creamer, but
Okay.
I say I could cut the calories in creamer because I love the hazelnut flavoring more. So I try not to give myself both of them. I just take the hazelnut flavoring.
What we want to do today is really just get to know you a little bit and let you tell parts of your story that inform what you do today and what you're passionate about.
Okay.
So start with where born and raised.
Okay. I was born and raised in Selma, Alabama.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I have a twin sister, and we are the only children from our mom and dad. And so we were born, all of our family lives in Selma. And so we were born and raised there until about the age of 7, because I moved to Birmingham at 7. We moved to Montgomery for a year when we were 6. So I completed first grade in Montgomery, Alabama. And when we were 7, we moved to Birmingham. And that's where I've been here since, with the exception of college.
Well, and I have to say, when you say you have a twin, you really have a twin.
Yes, I have an identical twin
I
sister.
mean, to the point that, I know you well now, but early on, when y'all were together, or you would walk, or I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, you still really look alike.
Yes, I went to her house the other night because we live around the corner from each other, and her daughter, who is 13, got us mixed up. She thought I was her mom. Yeah.
Ooh,
and
boy.
I'm like, no,
You could pull
Maddie.
some really good pranks
Yeah,
for that.
I said, Maddie, I'm auntie. I'm not your mom. And she said, whoa. Yeah,
So did y'all ever take advantage of that growing up? Or
we
play
did in
tricks on
college.
people?
In undergrad, we have some funny stories. I'm not so sure I should tell all of them, but we have some very funny stories of love, enjoying being twins.
How did you both get to law school? I mean, how did that come up?
Okay. Ever since I was little, I've only wanted to be a couple of things in life. I wanted to either be a news reporter or a lawyer. I didn't go through a lot of different things that I wanted to be. I was enamored with Pam Huff growing up. Yeah, on the news. Loved Pam Huff. I would write her letters when I was younger. And this is interesting. A few years ago, a young lady interned with the DA's office, and I was just asking her about her family. She's like, yeah, my mom is Pam Huff. I'm like, get out of here. I wrote your mom letters when I was little. I said, oh my gosh. And I said, please tell your mom that I wanted to be her when I was little, but I wanted to be either a news reporter or a lawyer. And at about the age of 12, I think I pretty much settled in that I wanted to be a judge. But it was important for me when I was little not to just think about going to college, but I really wanted to have a career, a profession. And that was probably a product of what I had seen. My sister and I, we were raised by our mom. Our dad died when we were 5 years old, very tragic death.
I'm sorry.
He committed suicide. And so my mom raised us, but we come from a family that our family wasn't very educated. And just when I was little, I wanted better. Like, I looked at my family, loved my family, but I understood that I wanted to live better. I saw some bad decisions, and I wanted to make better decisions. And so, for me at a young age, I felt like education was going to be the way out of that cycle. And so that's how thinking about going to law school came to life for me.
Wow. Well, I say this to Art a lot and to people when I'm talking about you, that one of the things, and certainly I've had a lot of bosses in my life, but I mean, I truly think you're like the best boss I've ever had.
Oh,
and one of the reasons for that is your ability to, when a situation comes up, how you very thoughtfully and methodically take all the information in, you gather all the information, then you take a period of time to think about it, and then you decide, you make a decision, you're very decisive, and then you're unapologetic about that decision. And so I think, okay, that's probably a really great description of a judge.
Wow.
So is that nature or is that nurture, or is it a combination?
Ooh. Wow, great question. I think it may be a combination of the two, because I think in being a judge for the past 14 years, I think it has been important that I be decisive, and that I not regret the decisions that I make. And so if I'm decisive, I have to understand those decisions and I have to move on from it. But also, I'm a very spiritual person too, and so I pray about everything. I often say I pray about all things holy and unholy. And so I let God lead my decision making.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I feel good about decisions. I have a peace about it. That's what I'll say. Not necessarily feel good, because even when I'm making a hard decision, I have a peace about things. And I think that comes from my relationship with God.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, like we mentioned in your bio, you sat over the drug court. So talk about, how did you get there? And then can you talk a little bit about that experience? I know you're really passionate, in that field. Did that come from just serving there? Talk a little bit about that.
In 2008, I ran for the drug court seat, but this is how it came about. I was a prosecutor in the DA's office in Jefferson County here in Birmingham, and I had been a lawyer, a prosecutor trying cases for a number of years there. The judge who had created the drug court program was retiring, and so the governor appointed someone to fulfill the vacancy of the retiring judge. And the person that was appointed, I said, this person has never been in this courthouse. Like, that's not right. This is a criminal courthouse. People's lives are at stake. That's not right. So I was young enough and naive enough to believe that I'm going to run for that. I'm going to do it. And so this is a true story. So I was working out at the downtown Y. This is before I had any children. Ramon and I, that's my husband, Ramon, we were married. And one morning I left the 5 o'clock workout class, and I called Ramon and I said, hey, I'm sitting in my car on the corner. I just believe that God is leading me to run for the drug court seat. Now, I had been working as a prosecutor for about 5.5 years at that time. And Ramon is, he's like, he will nurture any dream I have. Uh-huh. He is always so supportive. And he said, okay, we'll talk about it when you get home, but let's not play with God. Like, if you really feel like he is leading you in that direction, then we will entertain it. So when I got home that evening, we talked about it. And 2 weeks later, I put in my resignation at the DA's office, and everybody was like, are you crazy? Like, do you have any political affiliations? And I said no. And people asked me, my coworkers, they were like, well, what's your plan B? I said, I don't have one. This is my plan A, B, or C.
Wow.
This is all of it. And so I sold my car. So Ramon and I shared a car, and we put together my campaign. And because I truly felt like that morning at the gym, like God was saying to me, well, if you are not happy with who's there, do something about it. Like, and I think this is your time. So I ran for the seat, and I won in 2008. And so I began sitting in 2009 for the drug court seat. Those 10 years presiding over drug court, those were some of the most fulfilling years, the most, I think I learned the most about life, people, myself, and human nature in those 10 years, because my drug court clients taught me so much in life, just about forgiveness. They taught me a lot about getting up when you've been kicked down and starting over. And they also taught me that there is never a limit to how many times you can start over and make a good decision. Wow. And that was, and being young, because I was a young judge, but that was important for me to know at the time. Like, there aren't any set number of times that you get it, that you should have to get it right. Yeah. It may take 3 times for some people, and it may take 300 times for others, but everybody matters. And so I feel like I learned so much from them. And so yesterday, I was walking through the courthouse, and they were getting started on a drug court graduation, and there was a young lady that yelled, "Judge Owens, do you remember me?" Oh, and I'm like, yes, you are graduating now. She had been in drug court at least 5 years, because I've been away from there for 4 years, and I knew I had her for a year, and I was so proud of her. And so I miss those stories. In my new role, I don't get a chance to see that, but I've learned a lot from drug court.
Yeah.
And in the recovery prevention field that we're in, we run into people a lot that have come through your court that have not just made it, but now are giving back in some other field. I think of Paul Bryant, who talks a lot about
yes,
you, and now
yes.
he's a therapist and an addiction counselor and working through it. So there's probably a lot more of those stories around.
Oh, there are a lot. There are a few people who actually came through drug court. They got their lives together. They started working in drug court. They completed college. They completed graduate level studies, and they are moving on and living extremely productive lives, helping other people. Yes.
And that, that's one of the things I don't think we talk about enough. We try to share this as much as we can, but as many of the tragic stories that we hear, and certainly they're mounting these last few years, but the truth is most people get better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. We don't always hear those stories. We hear a lot of the stories about the overdoses,
Right.
and we hear about the resulting arrest from drug addiction. But there are so many great stories about families being restored that we don't always hear about. We don't always hear about moms and dads who get a chance to have a relationship with their children and their grandchildren again. And those things happen a lot in places like drug court. They happen a lot. And sometimes a defendant may not get it during drug court, because I've had some times where I had to sentence them out of the drug court program. They just didn't get it. But a few years later, something clicked with them, and they will come back and say, thank you for what you did. Even though I didn't complete the program, something there stuck with me.
Yeah. We hear that a lot about I wasn't ready then.
Yes.
Something stuck with me. And the old saying in recovery is, how long will it take? It takes as long as it takes.
Absolutely. And when I first started presiding over drug court, I went in and I was young, and I said, okay, I'm going to give people 3 times to mess up. And after 3 times, I'm going to sentence you out of the program. Well, I quickly learned that was a horrible way to look at things. And what I would also do when I initially started drug court, before you come in to enter the drug court program, you would have to take a plea on your case so that you can enter the program. I would drug test everyone that Friday before I took a plea. And if they were positive, I would lock them up for the weekend and then take the plea on Monday. I learned after about a month of doing that, well, that's not right. They need help. That's why they're coming into drug court. And I shouldn't punish them from the outset of being positive if I haven't given them any services to help them. And so we changed a lot about the mindset of recovery during that 10 years.
Well, that fits into this larger discussion that we're beginning to have more and more about one size does not fit all.
That's right.
And but having to adjust and be nuanced is difficult, right?
It is. And I was proud to say that during those 10 years, we started adjusting to individual needs. We started using an assessment where we would have people from tier 1 to tier 4, and we wouldn't group everyone all together, so that we can give tier 4, who may be our IV drug users, we could give them more attention that was needed and not group them with tier 1. Tier 1 may be your pot smokers who just recreationally use because they can.
And they ran afoul of the law. Otherwise, they may be functioning.
They are functioning, and if they wanted to stop, they could stop. They just want to smoke pot. And so we learned a lot, and I learned a lot over those years about how to treat people individually. And so sometimes there were some people that on what we would call our compliance day for drug court, I would lock up certain people if they didn't do well, and they would get mad when they saw other people who wouldn't get locked up. And I would always tell them, no, I treat you guys individually. I know what you're capable of doing. I know that you're not giving me your all, but she's still trying. She's still in a place where she's trying. And I recognize harm reduction. I'm one of those people that I understand that if you come in and you're testing positive for opiates, benzos, marijuana, heroin, well, if you come back next week and you just knock one off the list, then I'm gonna congratulate you on that, because the following couple of weeks we'll try to knock another drug off the list, because quitting cold turkey, well,
it doesn't work very often.
It does not work, and it's called addiction for a reason, and if If you threaten people with jail and prison time and they don't stop using drugs, they're addicted. Nobody would ever choose jail or prison if they had an opportunity not to choose it.
Well, and I know, in the family support group that we work in on Thursday nights, one of the things is being a parent of children, that are adults now that have struggled. It changes your perspective on lots of things. But, one of the things that we laugh about as parents, in that circle, which is good for us to find things to laugh about, is, parents will be in there and somebody will say, hey, my son or my daughter is graduating from drug. See, I'm tearing up. We're graduating from drug court this week or whatever. And I mean, literally, the circle will erupt. I mean, we will cheer and clap.
Yes.
And I just said, okay, 20 years ago, if you would have said, I'm clapping because my child graduated from drug court, you're like, no way.
Yeah.
That just would be shameful. Like, there's nothing to celebrate there. There's so much to celebrate.
So much to celebrate. And Carrie, you're absolutely right. 20 years ago, I think everybody would have been ashamed to say, I have a kid in drug court, or this is what our family is dealing with. But now there's so much to celebrate about it. And when we would have our drug court graduations, I was so amazed at how proud the graduates were of themselves and the family support that would be present in the courtroom. And for some people, that was the only graduation they'd ever had in their lives. That's the only time they would ever receive a certificate. And so we really celebrated drug court graduations. And I think it's something for all of us to celebrate. And even if, this is what I would always tell my drug court clients, even if you relapse and you make a bad decision, the only thing you have to do is that very next second make a good decision. That's it. You don't have to do anything else but let your next decision be a good decision. That's it.
Yeah. And I will say, during those 10 years that you were there and then ongoing, the drug court that you were over has gotten such a reputation in a good way of doing exactly what you're saying, caring about every person that comes, before you and investing in them and believing in them, which is such a difference from
and not putting everybody in the same box.
Yes, from the 10 years prior. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the evolution of the Jefferson County Drug Court has been the evolution of the community around substance use. It's just the beginning. We've got, more progress that we can make.
That's right.
But it's a shift. It's a shift from it's a criminal issue that has to be, dealt with to these are lives
absolutely
that have to be invested in if we want to see a difference.
You hit the nail on the head when you said there's a shift from these are criminals versus these are lives that we need to help change. Yes.
Okay, so how did you get to the APC board?
Okay.
That was pre me, so tell us about that.
So I met the previous executive director, and I don't remember how Shandor and I met, but he brought Steve Briggs, who was the founder of APC. He brought him to my office, and we talked for some time. And at that time, I wasn't affiliated with the organization, but I remember one of the other employees there asked if I would have a student as an intern, a high school student as an intern. And I said, sure. And so this high school student became an intern of mine. And that's really when I fell in love with APC. And Shandor and Steve asked me at a later time to become a member of the board, and I said, oh, absolutely. And the reason why was because I love the high school student who was my intern, who I still keep in contact with today, and I loved the idea of the chapters in the schools. I am a big believer of if we really want to change communities, I think we have to start with the students in the school. I think education and starting with students is the way to do it. And when I saw that APC was heavily involved in schools and trying to be in elementary, middle, and were very prevalent in high schools, I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to become a part of that.
Yeah, and you have been such a blessing to us, and
Thank you.
then you moved into the board chair position and really helped us navigate the pandemic.
Yeah.
So during your tenure, it's been a little dicey, but we got through it.
We did, and I often say this, it definitely helps to have a great executive director, and I've said this to you before, hiring you as the executive director was one of the best decisions like I've made in my life. I think it makes me feel good as I exit the organization to have you in place. I believe APC is going to flourish. They're going to be fine. They're going to do greater things. I mean, which is evidenced by us sitting here for the podcast. And so them having Carrie Wimberly is definitely a plus.
Thank you. Okay, so just shifting as we kind of end. We were talking a little bit before we got started, but what are the things that you're thinking about, passionate about, angry about? As we move forward and as you're in this new role? It's not new, you've been there 4 years, but tell us what you're thinking about.
What I'm thinking about a lot these days, it's my children. Like I want to make sure that I am a really good mother. I want to make sure that I am present with them. I want to make sure that I'm praying for them as much as my mom prayed for my sister and me. And I want to make sure that I understand what they need, that I see their gifts and their talents, and that I don't make my ideas of their gifts and talents become theirs. What I am passionate about is I'm passionate about education for children in the school system. I'm passionate about families being put together again. I'm passionate about substance abuse, issues surrounding substance abuse and not throwing people away because of addiction. I'm passionate about people understanding substance use disorder, like truly understanding it, because there is a fine line. People don't understand that you can support a person, but you don't have to condone the behavior. And I would tell my clients all the time, I don't condone what you're doing, but I'm here every step of the way. And I'm really passionate about people understanding substance abuse disorder. What makes me angry now is the division I think I see just amongst communities everywhere, because I think we have far more in common than not. And I am angry about us being mad at each other all the time. I'm angry about leaders who know that they pit us against each other for the wrong reasons. I am angry about leaders who feel as if they have to be either the far end of the left or the far end of the right without saying, hey, there is common ground for all of us. And so as a mother, I want to make sure that I raise my children not to be labeled. We talk about politics. We talk about everything all the time. And I tell them, I want you to judge people by the actions and not by labels. Like, that's important. Don't label yourself and don't become a part of a group. I always tell them this, you don't have to gang bang. You don't have to become a part of a gang. What you do is you are an army of one, and you make decisions about people based upon their actions and not their words. So I'll stop there. That's what I'm angry about.
Well, you said a little earlier, part of it in drug court, but this idea that sometimes families get to see kind of a redemptive process and come back together. But there was a story recently, very prominent in the media, that you were involved in which that got to happen for a family. So I was wondering if you could share about that one.
Yes, I will. There were two brothers back in the 90s, I think back in 1994, who were charged with the rape of a young woman in Leeds. And they were, I believe, maybe 19 and 21 at the time. And I may have the ages wrong, but they were very young. Those brothers have, they always maintained their innocence. They always said, we don't know who this lady is. We were not there. It was not us. Unfortunately, they were convicted by a jury and sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge sentenced them actually to the minimum sentence, because upon a conviction of rape first degree, the the sentencing range is 20 years to life, and the judge gave them the minimum of 20 years. Those brothers maintained their innocence while in prison. They spent 20 years in prison for a crime that they always maintained that they did not commit. So a few months ago, I was going through my Rule 32 petitions, and those are petitions for post-conviction relief that defendants file. Typically, they're filed 99% of the time. They're filed while a defendant is in prison, and he is asking the judge to release him from prison or overturn his conviction. And typically, 99% of the time, they are baseless. They are baseless. Well, these two brothers, I pulled out their petitions one day. I finished with trial, and I was really getting ready to type a denial to deny their petitions. And as I read through them, I noticed, I said, wow, this was in the 90s, and they were sentenced to 20 years, so they couldn't still be in prison. And as I continued to read, I saw that they had been released from prison, but they were still maintaining their innocence. And in addition, they were attaching evidence of a police report that identified another person as the perpetrator. That police report was never turned over to them, their attorney, or their attorney during the trial back in the 90s, and they were asking me to take another look at it. So I put it aside. I stopped typing my denial. I had a hearing on it where the prosecution was present, the brothers were present, and after the hearing, it was clear to see, after hearing from several witnesses, it was clear to see that had this information been provided to their attorneys, and had their attorneys had an opportunity to present it in court and cross-examine the witness about it, there was a very high likelihood that they would have not been convicted. So their convictions were overturned, and thanks to the DA of Jefferson County, Danny Carr, he agreed actually with the court in that he was not going to pursue prosecution of them again, because once I overturned their convictions, they still could be tried again. The DA's office could try the case again, but the DA decided not to attempt to try the case again and to let these brothers try to live what's left of their lives in a meaningful way.
Wow.
Well, the one thing you shared about that earlier that's really touching is not just the brothers, but the parents.
Yes. They told me during the hearing in court that the only thing they prayed for when they were in prison, and they said it was very hard because being in prison, of course, is hard. Being in prison for a crime you didn't commit is even harder, but it is very hard when you're there for a rape first degree offense. And they said they prayed that their parents didn't die during those 20 years that they were in prison. And so I said, well, where are your parents? And they both, their mom and their dad, they were in court and they raised their hands, and the brothers just started crying. These grown men started crying, and they were like, that's the only thing we wanted. We wanted God to let our parents live long enough to see us out of prison. And thank God that their parents are able to enjoy life with them now.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Amazing story. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
joining
me.
us today. It's great to get to know parts about you that we didn't know, and for sharing that with us. And thank you for all of your service at APC. And we know you're not still on the board, but you're still part of our team.
I am.
And we look forward to seeing you at our events and continuing to partner with you.
I will be there, and I will continue to remain a partner because I believe in the work that you guys do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as a citizen of this state and this city, thank you for your service, not just your formal service, but what you do from the soul. And as a volunteer at APC, thank you. And as the husband of the executive director, I cannot tell you what a support you have been these last 2 years for her. It's been amazing. So thank you for everything.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Folks, hope you'll join us next time on APC Recovery Cafe. We'll have another story of folks connected to the Birmingham Recovery and Prevention scene. Thanks.
One of the things that APC is known for is being a connector, because we're stronger together.
Not only are we there for those who are suffering through substance use disorder, but we're there for family members, and we really take our job seriously.
We all have personal reason why we're in this field. We're changing people's lives one community at a time.